Hey everybody, I belong to a model railroading club in Richmond, Virginia, and we have 3 different layouts that we set up and put on display all around the area, different times of the year. And we quite often get asked what's the different sizes of trains, and we are in particular an O scale only club, so quite often we get asked what's the difference between the word O gauge and O scale. So I finally put this together. This will be going up to our club this week. And our largest layout, when it's all put together, measures 21 feet by 42 feet. And it looks like this. It's this height. It has the same color wood. It has the same height plexiglass. It has the same skirt. So I built it so it really matches our large layout. When it comes to the scales of trains, I've got them all represented here. This is all of the common scales in the United States. We start back with G. We go to standard gauge from back in the older days, which they are still making the trains again today. Scale, O scale. Traditional O scale. S scale. HO. N. Z is the tiny one. And I chose all silver tank cars because if you bought one of these sets, you bought a Lionel or you bought an American Flyer or you bought an HO set, chances are if you bought a freight set, chances are you got a silver tank car. If you bought a Lionel set, you got this one. If you bought American Flyer set, you got this one. So they're all lined up. They're all on their own size track. I think it displays pretty well. And I can take all the plexiglass off. These are in here with 2 hanger bolts that have nuts on the back, and simply unscrew the nuts and I can pull all of these off. I'm real happy with how it turned out, no matter where you go to look at it from whatever side. I'm very, very pleased with it. And I'll tell you more about the construction about it at the end if you're interested. But here's the sign that I put together. Again, because we are an O scale club, and people ask us all the time, is it O gauge or O scale? Both terms are commonly interchanged. However, their definitions are very different. Gauge, in railroad terms, gauge refers to the track and only the track. Gauge is a measurement. It is the distance between the rails. The gauge of real American railroad track is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Our layouts use O gauge track. The distance between the outer rails is 1 1/4 inches. O gauge track is 1/48 the width of real track. That ratio is 1:48. Scale refers to the size of an item compared to its real life equivalent. Anything can be made to scale or in scale. Trains, buildings, people, trees, everything. Scale is proportional. It is a ratio. It is an accurate measurement. O scale is pronounced O scale. O scale is 1:48. It is spoken 1:48, 1/48, or 1/48. 1 inch of the scale item represents 48 inches of the real item. If you put 48 of the same O scale cars on a track, it would be as long as 1 real life train car. The scales, trains, and gauges tracks in this display are: G is also known as large scale. There are many different scales of these trains. 1 to 29th is one of them. Standard gauge. This is the only train size that is referred to by the word gauge. Standard gauge items are not manufactured to any specific or accurate scale. And because we're an O scale only club, I'll go into great detail here with the O scale part of it. Again, I like to help people learn and understand things. So, scale, O scale is 1/48, as described above. Items are true to scale, also known as 1/4 inch scale, because 1/4 inch of the scale item represents 12 inches of the real life item. Scale, O scale trains run on O gauge track. And this is our scale, O scale. Next up is the traditional. Traditional O scale is known as 1/48, but items are not true to the scale at all. They are smaller in size than scale O-scale items. Their proportions were chosen by manufacturers for the purpose they wanted their trains to serve, with no regard to scale. Traditional O-scale trains run on O-gauge track. And this is our O-scale train running on what we call tubular old Lionel O-scale O-gauge track. And then the traditional one also runs on O-gauge track. But if you look closely, and I'm going to explain it here in the middle, you can see the difference in the height. The width between the rails is the same. It is still O-gauge track, but that track with the brown ties is here. Some of these items are also called O27. O27 actually refers to the smaller track that came with these train sets. It is a thinner track and its curves make a 27-inch diameter circle. The size of the trains that came with these sets were even slightly smaller than the traditional O-scale trains in a lot of cases. We could keep on going down to S. S is 1/64. It is also known as 3/16 scale because 3/16 inch represents 12 inches of the real item. HO is 1/87. It is named because its scale is very close to half of O-scale trains. N is 1/160, and Z is 1/220. The way this thing goes together is, let me get the computer back up. This is the board as it was built. The outside edges are 1x4, and this is sanded 1/2-inch plywood, and all the nail holes were filled. This is the underside of it, and there are 4 pockets, and the 4 pockets are where the legs go. The legs come out and go in and out very, very easily, and we have this threaded fastener that's 1/4x20 that's drilled into the wood here, and then we simply use an eye bolt, a 1/4x20 eye bolt. We put the leg in, we tighten up the eye bolt, it presses this way, and it holds the leg in place. It works really well for us. And then I did paint it, the top of it green, so in case I ever scratched it, if I ever scratched it to where I rubbed all the ground cover off, I've got a green base. The ground cover that most of the guys use is Woodland Scenics Blended Turf. There are pads. These are 1.5 inch. They're actually 1.25 inch pads that are in the top of the legs. And then we also have adjustable feet at the bottom. So when we get where we're setting up, we can adjust the displays for level. I put everything down with safety wire. I've got 2 different thicknesses of safety wire. And this whole display, everything is permanently bolted down. There's screws on all the tracks, and every train car is physically mounted in place. What I did is took my safety wire, I ran up over the trucks or the axles, depending on what worked best for me for the size I was working with, and I drilled straight through the bottom, and then I have the safety wire tied together. You really can't see it. It worked out terrific. I made these to where I don't have to put them on the track every day because I'm just the details guys, and I wanted them all lined up perfectly in center. And if I try to do that while I'm at a show with rolling cars on track, it would never look like that. Plus, I can pick this thing up and turn it completely on its side to get it through a narrow doorway, and they're not going anywhere. I'm real happy with it. It's really worked out well. The same thing with the placards on the side. I simply got shoe molding, cut it to fit, used my label maker to put the labels on it, and then out of the same safety wire, I cut the length that I needed, and I just made double-ended nails. And each one has a nail drilled in here, and then it just pushed in place, and they're on there permanently also. The skirt comes off, it's on there with Velcro, and when I take it somewhere, I'm going to haul it in there. So what I did is I made shorter legs and skids, so I will put the display on that table, pull the long legs off, put the short legs on, roll it up to the back of my Forerunner, and it slides right in and it clears the ceiling. And then what I can do is I measured it to where that cart laying face down will slide underneath it. So I can take my display where I'm going, and I have a cart. If I need to transport it from my car to the area very far, I can roll it in there on the wheels. If I'm not taking my cart, that gives me about 18, 19 inches of clearance. If I'm taking trains to run that day, my trains can go under there, and this thing sits up nice and high in the Forerunner, protected, and everything I want to take with me goes with me. So I hope you enjoy that. I'm very proud of it. I think it turned out pretty good. And this will be going up to the club this week. And that is my display for model railroading, scale trains, and the different gauges of track. I hope that helped you out in some way. Please click the like and the subscribe buttons if you would. And God bless. Have a great day.